With Gundam SEED Freedom set to release in UK cinemas on March 23rd, I've started to work my way through the Gundam SEED franchise, starting with the original series in Gundam SEED. So today I want to give my thoughts on the series, talk about my very first experience watching it in 2024. But before I get into my thoughts, I want to hear from you guys, so head on down to the comment section below, let me know your thoughts on Gundam SEED, if you've seen it, whether you watched it originally when it came out back in 2002, or if you watched it in more recent years, maybe leading up to the release of Gundam SEED Freedom. And while you're there, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you're a fan of anime and Japanese gaming content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. So Gundam SEED is a series that I've heard a lot of mixed things about. I know it's big for a certain generation of fans where it introduced them to Gundam and maybe even just introduced them to anime overall. So yeah, for a certain group of people, this series is a big deal. But then there's this other side where people say that it definitely feels of its time, it's cheesy, it's melodramatic, and it really hasn't aged well. Now, having watched the series myself, I completely disagree with the negative side because this series is actually fantastic. Starting off with what it does so well, and I feel like most Gundam series generally do this is really the core, the thematics of Gundam as a franchise, and that's the exploration of war. And it's so riveting in Gundam SEED. It poses the question of what is good, what is evil, explores this idea of whether or not it truly exists or it's a matter of perspectives, ideals, and that to me is always fascinating. If you can really dive deep into that, dive deep into people's mindsets towards it, dive deep into the two sides and explore, their ideas, where they see themselves as the good guys, the other side as evil, and why they think that as well. And I think Gundam SEED does a very good job at exploring that throughout its 48 episode run. And that idea of two different perspectives is explored at its best through this core relationship slash dynamic between Kira, Yamato, and Athrun Zala. Let's talk about Kira first, and I think what makes him a really interesting protagonist is that he's fighting for a side where he doesn't agree with the ideals of them necessarily, but he's kind of doing it out of a choice to protect those around him. And to me, that's a fascinating idea where he doesn't actually, have like a personal stake in the war as such, but he just needs to keep some people safe that he, really likes. And it makes for a very, kind of personal reasoning for why he's fighting. He's not doing it out of, the good for an entire civilization or planet. It's more so about just a small group of people that he really cherishes. As the series does progress, especially going into the midpoint of it, is where Kira's perspective on things really changes and he starts to see a broader picture of keeping everyone safe, ending the war, but not defeating either one side. That whole arc that Kira goes through there is fantastic. I think that maybe it could have done with a little bit more time and development, but generally the final outcome of that, the kind of vision that is seen through, I thought was a really, really good character arc. Now moving on to Athrun though, I think he might actually be my favourite character in the series. Starts off as someone that's not evil, but he's fighting on this side because he's kind of been raised this way. He does have a personal stake in the war, considering that his mother was killed in, one of the plants, Junior 7, I think it was called, which was a big attack that essentially kickstarted this entire war. So he has a personal stake in that. He has a reason to dislike the Earth forces and be a part of Zaft. And as soon as you put a personal stake like that into a character for why they are fighting, it's just immediately someone you can resonate with, someone you can get behind. And you never really see him as evil either. You never really see Zaft as evil, Earth as evil, and I think that whole idea of neither one actually being good or evil and seeing those two different perspectives is explored at its best through these two lead characters. But even outside of Kira and Athrun, this whole series has a great cast of characters. As I was watching through it at the start, I thought, I'm not really vibing with a lot of these people, but as we kind of progress through it, and even though not every single character gets the heights of development that Kira and Athrun get, everyone still gets their moment to shine. Everyone still gets a character arc and some development, whether that's someone like Flake, who is a character that I don't necessarily like, but I can appreciate that there is a character arc there and development. Same with Mula Flagra as well, who I did really like. There's so much great development through all these characters throughout the series, and if you can do that whilst writing a story and not make it feel overstuffed, not kind of feel like you're pushing certain characters to the side where, maybe they shouldn't be pushed to the side, I can appreciate that, and I think that is damn good storytelling. Generally, I am pretty new to the Gundam franchise, but one thing I've noticed across everything that I've watched so far, and something I have come to expect, is awesome mobile suit designs, and Gundam Seed is certainly one of those as well. It has no shortage of great designs. You can tell that they're trying to sell the Gunplas. Mobile suits are being introduced like almost every single episode, and even if they're, not on screen for a whole lot of time, they do exist definitely to make those Gunplas, sell them, because I know that in Japan especially, they are huge sellers. It's essentially the Transformers of Japan, where people, eat that shit up. People buy a lot of them. I'm not gonna lie, there are a hell of a lot of mobile suits within this series that I would be more than happy to own as Gunplas, whether that's the Freedom, the Justice, the Strike, the Blitz, the Buster. There's so many, even like the Providence, which is like introduced almost in the last 2 episodes. There's plenty of mobile suits, the Astray Red Frame as well. All these are just coming to my mind right now, and there's just some great designs in this. There's also a lot that just have really interesting like color palettes as well. I think it's the Buster, for example, has like green, red, bit of brown in there as well. To me, that's just like an interesting color combination that you wouldn't typically see. So I can definitely appreciate something like that. Of course, they exist to sell those Gunplas. That doesn't change the fact that they still look awesome on screen. Very few anime in this world are perfect, and Gundam Seed is no exception to that rule. One of my issues being that it's a bit too melodramatic at times, though I did expect it going in. It's a series from 2002. Early 2000s were almost the peak of romance and drama anime, and a lot of that melodrama that is a massive part of both those genres kind of steeped into every other genre, whether it's shonen, whether it's mecha, whatever it may be, they all had like some of that. It's certainly a product of its time in that regard, whether you see it as a good thing or a bad thing. That is just down to perspective. I think if you grew up with it, you probably aren't going to see it as a negative thing. And also if you enjoy that level of melodrama, then you're not going to see it as a bad thing either. But I guess if you go from watching like the original Gundam, which, don't get me wrong, has melodrama in it, but not to the same degree as this, you will kind of look at this as the more melodramatic version of that original series. Which also brings me on to my probably biggest issue with this, is that it is almost way too similar to the original Gundam, whether that's its characters, its story beats, the structure, the initial setup of it. There is so much in here that you can equate back to that original Gundam series or movie trilogy, whatever you did watch it as. If, like me, you've witnessed that story, you are going to see so many similarities that almost feel like they're ripped straight out and kind of put a slightly different spin on it. The initial setup is basically kind of the same thing as the initial setup as the original Gundam series. There are specific moments that almost feel like a slightly altered version of the original Gundam series. There's certain events, certain locations that we go to, the structure especially of how we get to those locations and such. It definitely feels like early 2000s, almost like 20 years later version of the original Gundam. If you haven't seen the original Gundam, this is not going to be a problem for you because you haven't witnessed that story before. But if you've seen it, it's something you are really going to pick up on, and it's something I definitely picked up on. It doesn't bother me that much because I thought it was executed really well in Seed. I think this is one of those series where I'm going to look back on it. I'll look back on the original Gundam as well, and I will start to see more similarities. And I feel like over time, maybe they'll start to bother me a little bit more. But as it stands now, it's not the end of the world. I still really enjoyed my time with Seed, and I think that it does some really good things to make it stand on its own as well. So overall, did I enjoy my first time watching Gundam Seed in 2024? I definitely did. I think this is a great series. It's got a great cast of characters, awesome action. It delivers on all the kind of Gundam goodness that you'd want, where the thematics are there, the interesting exploration of all of those ideas is there as well, and you have a cast that you can get behind, especially protagonists that you can get behind as well, and a core relationship. There's so much in here that I think is just really good. It's great sci-fi, it's great mecha, and it's great commentary on the ideas and the politics really of war. It is no doubt a series that feels of its time. Some people might say it feels dated, but I think that the way that it explores its ideas, those ideas kind of transcend eras. The idea of war, the exploration of that, I think is something that's always going to transcend whatever period it releases in. So even though stylistically Gundam Seed is very much of the early 2000s, the core heart of the series, the core themes, the core story, I think will just live on forever and are never really going to feel dated. So yeah, to put it simply, watching Gundam Seed for the first time in 2024 was a great experience, and I am very excited to dive into its sequel series very soon. So with all that in mind, I'm going to give Gundam Seed a B. Before I get out of here though, please do leave a like on this video. Also subscribe if you're a fan of anime and Japanese gaming content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, stay tuned for my review of Gundam SEED Destiny, and expect plenty more SEED related videos. I want to rank the openings of this series. I'll probably do the same for SEED Destiny as well. And once I've seen all of that, seen Gundam SEED Freedom, which of course I'll bring a review to you guys as well for that, I will probably do a character ranking, mobile suit tier list, all that kind of stuff. Plenty more Gundam SEED videos to come, so if you want to see more of that, definitely subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when those go up. But as always, thank you so much for tuning into mchat today. I'll see you guys next time.